The New York Mets extended their season with a big win on Saturday afternoon, but the job is not done. They still have to win on Sunday, and the Reds still have to lose.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. I've covered the New York Mets on this show since the 2019 season. It's the only podcast that covers the Mets 7 days a week throughout the regular season. If you want to find some of my written work, you can do so over at justbaseball.com, where I work as the editor-in-chief. The New York Mets got the job done on Saturday, and I was there to witness it. It was a lot of fun being in the ballpark as the Mets were able to hold on and beat the Marlins. It was a wild atmosphere, a lot of Mets fans. I will say that Lone Depot Park is just brutal in so many ways. It's brutal to get down there if there's ever more than 5,000 people in the ballpark. We left 2 hours before the game, and I don't live that far from Miami. I live about, probably if there was no traffic, half an hour away. And by the time we got down there and got in the garage and everything, we were just getting to our seats in time to watch Francisco Lindor draw a leadoff walk. So that was frustrating, just the stress of getting there. Lindor's on, though. Juan Soto pops up. A wild pitch advances Lindor to second base. And then Pete Alonso cashes him in with an RBI double. 2 innings later, Pete Alonso hits a home run with 2 outs, nobody on, to put the Mets up 2-0. Crushed it into the bullpen bar in left field. Big homer for Pete. He then scores again in the 3rd inning, drew a leadoff walk, and would eventually come around to score on an RBI double by Jeff McNeil. So a huge game by Pete Alonso. As we were watching this whole game, something about Lone Depot Park that was pretty evident was a lot of people were struggling to get there. So just imagine me, my dad, my best friend's a Marlins fan, though. So he was, a respectful Marlins fan, wasn't going too nuts on the Marlins' behalf, knowing how much that game meant to me and my dad. But me and my dad are sitting there trying to enjoy this Mets game while there's people coming in and out the whole time. And our seats were right at the end of the row with a walkway right next to us. And the only reason why I'm telling this part of the story is because it was probably the 3rd inning where it had been a constant stream of people, because there's so many people that were showing up late because it was so hard to get to the ballpark, and then everybody has to get their beer and their hot dog and whatever it is. So everyone's going back and forth, and just all game, it's just looking around people, trying to see what's going on. And I look to my left at the section over, and I see probably 5 empty seats, a couple rows back from us on that end, where we would have been clear of the walkway. And so I asked, my dad and my buddy, like, we should just go over there so we don't have to keep on having our view obstructed. And I see my dad's nervous immediately. He's thinking about it because he knows it's a much better view. But we were sitting in those seats for Pete Alonso's RBI double and for his home run. And the Mets are up 3-0. And needless to say, nothing was getting my dad out of those lucky seats. At one point, I said, is it because these seats are lucky? That's why the Mets are winning. And we look up on the Jumbotron, and they're running some promotion for whatever, some lucky row that was getting Celsius. But to see on the scoreboard lucky row at the same time as when we were sitting there talking about if the seats had luck in them, there was no getting my dad out of those seats. And I respect it, and it was a fun game to still look around the people, listen to the drums that were going around the stadium for whatever reason. Sounded, in my dad's words, like we were at a high school football game, not a baseball game. But regardless, the Mets held on, and Clay Holmes was amazing and really did step up in a huge way. The guy that I was talking about the Mets should shorten 2 months ago after the trade deadline. You should probably shorten up Clay Holmes. You have all this starting pitching. Now he's the last man standing. And Clay Holmes was your ace to get you to a game 162. He was unbelievable. And it started with a 5-pitch first inning, a 13-pitch second inning, really was able to let the Mets get comfortable in that game. Third inning, he issues his first base runner with 2 outs, issues a walk, gives up a base hit. So there was 2 runners on, but he gets a big ground ball to Jeff McNeil to get out of that jam. Pitched a 1-2-3 fourth inning. Then he issued a pair of walks with 2 outs in the 5th. Again, though, got a big ground ball to Jeff McNeil to get out of the inning. And then a 1-2-3 6th inning with 3 ground balls for Holmes, who needed only 78 pitches to get through 6 innings, allowed just 1 hit, walked 3, struck out 2. 11 of his 18 outs came on the ground. And it was just really reassuring with Holmes on the mound, clearly having stuff that was playing in the zone, and guys were just not able to square him up. He looked awesome, and he really did keep the Mets alive. The bullpen was great. Raley, Rogers to Diaz. That's the new 7-8-9 combination, and it's working for the Mets. They all were perfect in their innings. Mets tacked on a couple of runs in the 9th, couple of singles by Francisco Alvarez and Tyrone Taylor, RBI single by Francisco Lindor. Juan Soto drew a walk and a run scored on a wild pitch. Mets left them loaded, though, which kept Ryan Helsley in the bullpen as Helsley was warming up if that game got any more lopsided. If you want to be, someone who manages in hindsight, you can say, oh, maybe the Mets could have won that game with Helsley instead of Diaz, and they should have kept Diaz rested for multiple outs on Sunday. Well, I'll tell you, we watched Edwin Diaz last year get used at an extraordinary rate at the end of the season and into the first round of the playoffs, or first couple rounds of the playoffs. I think Diaz will still be available for 6 outs even after he pitched on Saturday, and you had to just lock up that game. I was very happy that Edwin Diaz ran out onto the field because I was not ready to watch Ryan Helsley potentially give up a couple runs, and then Diaz comes in a much more stressful situation. It really was a dominant game for the New York Mets, a 1-hit shutout, and now you live to fight another day. And so now game 162 is all that matters for the New York Mets here. And it was thanks to Clay Holmes, who pitched a gem, the Mets bullpen that held up, and also Pete Alonso. You got to give him his flowers. An unbelievable game, unbelievable season. I went to another Clay Holmes start at Lone Depot Park earlier in the season. Mets won that game as well. And Pete Alonso was a monster. He had that huge home run late. He went 4 for 4. Just a big game for Pete that really did keep the Mets in it. And I think they won in extras, if my memory does serve. Sometimes there's so many games in between. That was the 6th game of the season. Here we are, game 162 coming up. So a lot has happened in between. But I think, to me, what this game should remind you is, regardless of what happens here, regardless of if the Mets make the playoffs or not, Pete Alonso has not been the problem, and Pete Alonso needs to be back in a Mets uniform next year. He's about to set a career high potentially. He's got a 273 batting average. It would be his best OPS since his rookie season at 874. He set a career high with 41 doubles. He's got 38 homers, and he's driven in 126. Pete Alonso is far from the problem that has made this such a frustrating season for the New York Mets. And whatever happens, I think he has proven that he needs to be part of this team moving forward. It was a really big performance by him to keep the Mets season alive. Without Pete Alonso, I don't know if you win that game. So now it comes down to a 162. But first, what happened with the Reds? I'm going to talk about that game and where things stand with one game left to play here in just a minute. Today's episode is brought to you by 5-Hour Energy. Caffeine just got a flavor upgrade. 5-Hour Energy shots deliver a tasty caffeine boost. There's 17 bold flavors. Each 2-ounce shot packs the caffeine of a premium 12-ounce cup of coffee, plus B vitamins and nutrients with 0 sugar, which means 0 crashes. What I love about 5-Hour Energy is just how portable they are. Big taste, but a tiny shot that you can take anywhere and get that boost when you need it. My favorite flavor is blue raspberry, but you got so many great flavors to choose from cherry to berry to apple bash, peach mango. There is so much you can find over at 5hourenergy.com. Honestly, what I love too is it just kicks in fast, and because it's sugar-free, you don't have to worry about that crash later, which really is the big benefit of 5-Hour Energy. Enough with the boring, flavorless caffeine. It's time to give your caffeine a flavor upgrade with 5-Hour Energy Shots. Get the favorites you love or be bold and try something new in store or online at 5hourenergy.com. That's www.5hourenergy.com or go to Amazon today. If you're watching on YouTube, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Help us get closer to our next goal of 15,000 subscribers. Wanted to get there by the end of the season. Not sure if we can pull it off at this point, but I really do appreciate all of you who continue to subscribe. Now, like most of you, as soon as the Mets game was over, I was looking towards the Reds game against the Brewers, hoping that the Brewers could help the Mets, and going into a game 162, the New York Mets would control their own fate. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen. The Reds were able to pull it out thanks to one big, ugly inning. Oh, man, it felt like I was watching the Mets play against the Reds, not the Brewers. Just brutal. And we're watching in the car on the drive back. Inning starts off with the pitcher, Robert Gasser, making an error, throwing error. So that puts a runner on. Then he gives up a double, gets a strikeout, but gives up an RBI single after that, gets a fly out, then he walks a batter and was pulled. So now you got Jacob Misiorowski coming out of the bullpen, bases loaded jam, trying to work his way out of it. And Misiorowski, who has not been very good, that's why he's not going to be in the rotation come playoff time. Shocking, because he was an all-star. Maybe Major League Baseball should not have added him to the all-star roster after whatever it was, 7 starts. But Misiorowski gives up a base hit to Brian Hayes that was just a cue ball, a little dying flare of a line drive, if you can even call that a line drive, that just hits the ground past Misiorowski. He can't get to it. Run scores. So that was really frustrating. Then he walks in a run. Then gives up a big hit. TJ Friedel, I believe, scores 3, 2 runs on the single, and then just an errant throw, getting the ball in, and ends up going past the third baseman into foul territory, and that puts another run. So just an ugly inning for the Brewers, allows the Reds to get 6 runs, and that's all they needed. The game ended up being a 7-4 loss for the Brewers. They had a chance. They loaded the bases. I will say, the Brewers were not just mailing that game in. Their guys were still giving good at-bats. They were still fighting to win it. They just put themselves in a big hole and couldn't climb their way out of it. And they don't have, of course, the same desperation as a team like the Mets should have right now, because they've sewn everything up. They have the best record in baseball. They will have the best record in baseball. The Phillies could join them, but the Brewers have the tiebreaker. So they have home field throughout the entirety of the postseason. So there's really nothing the Brewers have to play for. I'm happy that today they are going to throw Freddie Peralta out there. And because the divisional round will start for them next Saturday, he's going to have 5 days rest between this start and a playoff start. So it could be a fairly traditional start for Peralta. I don't think he's going to get up to 100 pitches, but could he get 75 pitches into the game? I think that's possible. And you're going to have Brady Singer going for the Reds. So the Reds will have a good arm, but a guy that did give up 4 runs to the Pirates his last time out. So the hope is the Reds lose today, and that's what you need. Every game's going to start the exact same time, so everyone will be, dual focus, looking at the Mets game, looking at the Brewers-Reds game to see what happens. While it would be very frustrating for the New York Mets to miss out on the playoffs via tiebreaker, because that is the reality that we're staring into right now. That's what is the most likely outcome. That the Mets win, that the Reds win, and the Mets won't make it. Or both of the teams lose and the Mets don't make it, which would be even more frustrating. But they are going to be eliminated, if they are, via tiebreaker. Because the Reds beat the Mets in their season series, the Mets will not get a chance for a game 163. They're done. Now, I know that's frustrating for fans, but I just want to get out in front of this one. For any fan that's going to say it's not fair that the Mets don't play a 1-game playoff against the Reds, you got to remember the Mets made the playoffs via tiebreaker last year. They went into that doubleheader with the Braves, and both teams knew if they each won a game, they'd both be in, because the Diamondbacks did not have the tiebreaker in that type of a scenario. The Mets and the Braves each had won the season series against the Diamondbacks, so they were in trouble. And that is why, sitting on the sidelines last year, the Diamondbacks were eliminated after the season had ended for them a day later due to a doubleheader split, where the Mets at that point had already locked up a playoff spot and they were just trying to survive 27 outs. They didn't really care about winning the game. So I get the frustration if this season ends because of a tiebreaker, but the Mets have nobody to blame but themselves. If they win today, they're an 84-win team. 84-win team, that's it. I did say 84 wins get you in the playoffs, but that could get the Reds in the playoffs too. But when this ends, if the Mets on the outside looking in, there's so many second guesses you're going to have. They couldn't win 2 games against the Nationals last weekend, and they had one in the bag, and they blew it. They couldn't win 2 games against the Rangers. Just could not score. And then the Rangers, after that, completely free-falled their way out of the playoffs. The Marlins came to Citi Field for 4. You lost 3 of 4. You blew that game on Friday night. I mean, there's just so many games you can look back on, even in just the past month, that could have gone differently where the Mets would not be in this position. But here they are. They got to try to win to get in, and they need the Reds to lose. We're going to talk about what all hands on deck means for the Mets in this final game on Sunday. Sean Manaea is getting the start, but what else will the Mets do to try to keep the Marlins off the board and win this game? I'll go through it all here in just a minute. Today's episode is brought to you by Nutrafol. You've probably seen a million ads for hair growth products and thought, sure, like that actually works. There are so many products out there, it's hard to know which ones are actually going to do anything. That's why you should give Nutrafol a closer look. Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist-recommended hair growth supplement brand trusted by over 1.5 million people. And it's not just hype. This is a supplement clinically tested that targets the root causes of thinning and shedding with a proactive approach. Whether you're at work or out with friends or even getting ready in the morning, Nutrafol is going to give you more confidence in your daily routine. You can feel good about knowing that it's NSF certified and backed by peer-reviewed studies. See thicker, stronger hair with less shedding in just 3 to 6 months with Nutrafol. For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering Locked On MLB listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com and enter the promo code LOCKEDONMLB. That's Nutrafol.com, promo code LOCKEDONMLB. If you're an everydayer that always tunes into the show, make sure you become a Locked On Mets insider. This is our texting service where you get updates from me anytime news breaks in the Mets. You can ask me questions anytime, take part in our Locked On Mets signed photo giveaways, and you get a live graphic sent to your phone each day so you know who's in the starting lineup without ever having to go on social media. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, find a link in the episode description. Go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. Game for your life, and Sean Manaea is getting the ball. David Peterson was the other option, but they choose to go with the guy that has better stuff, which is still Manaea. And so he's going to go out there, and we'll see how long the Mets are going to stick with him. The hope is he comes out firing, has a great start, is able to get through the lineup a couple times through and get you deep into the game, or at least get you into the 5th or 6th inning so it's not covering a large portion of this game with the bullpen, because it is always tough to just string together good appearance after good appearance after good appearance from your bullpen. But also, if it looks dicey at all whatsoever, the Mets are going to make moves. And beyond just Manaea, again, you have Peterson as an option who's on full rest. You got Nolan McLean who's on 2 days rest. You never know. Could be throw day for him, or they might decide, hey, if we need an inning, maybe we'll go to him. You got Jonah Tong on 3 days rest. I don't know if any of those are really good options in relief. I think probably the best course of action for the Mets is hopefully to get Manaea through 4 innings maybe, and then you turn it over to the bullpen, even if it's just 3 innings. You got Dylan Ross, who finally got called up, second to last day of the season, so he is ready to go, flamethrower, but that'll be his MLB debut in a do-or-die game. That would be a very gutsy decision to pitch Dylan Ross. We'll see what the Mets choose to do. You got Ryan Helsley, who has been better lately, but there is still all of the struggles he's had that will make everybody nervous whenever he steps on the mound. But Helsley is fresh. You got Stanek. He's pretty fresh at this point too. So those 2 guys can absolutely get some outs earlier on in the game. I still think if push comes to shove, I imagine Raley, Rogers, and Diaz will all be available on a back-to-back. And I think if you can get the lead to them in the 7th inning, that's what you're going to do. You're going to go right back to Raley, Rogers, Diaz, and trust those 3 guys to close out the game. And Worst case scenario, your life is on the line. If Edwin Diaz needs to get more than 3 outs, I think Edwin Diaz will happily take the ball and try to get more than 3 outs. But the Mets have to score. They have to get on Edward Cabrera early, get a lead, because there's so much pressure in this game, not only for the Mets to win, but also if you can jump out, and let's say the Mets in the first inning put up 4 runs, and then Sean Manaea is pitching with the lead, but also in Milwaukee, the Reds are going to be looking at that scoreboard and they're going to see, oh, wow, the Mets just got off to that big lead. We have to win this game now. And you want the Reds playing tight. You want the Reds potentially making mistakes. It's not like this is a battle of two teams who are going to win 90 ball games this year. We're talking about two teams that at best are going to finish, 6 games over 500? They're right now 5 games over. So it's not like this Reds team is completely exempt from making some mistakes. So I really do think that the earlier you can grab a lead in this game, the more pressure it's going to put on Cincy. And that's what you want at this point. Because, again, the Mets can win this game and still be eliminated. That is the position they have put themselves in. Now, offensively, the Mets are going to have to go without Brett Baty, as he was put on the IL with a season-ending oblique injury. Jared Young came back up to give the Mets another bat off the bench. But I think for this game, I imagine Ronnie Mauricio gets to start again, because the Mets clearly don't trust Mark Vientos to play defense at third base, and rightfully so. And he hasn't been swinging a good bat in September either. So Vientos played himself out of the starting lineup. At the same time, I don't think I would roll the exact same 9 guys out there. I actually would put Vientos in there, but not over Ronnie Mauricio. I'd stick him in there over Starling Marte. You have really good career numbers for Vientos against Edward Cabrera. It's 6 at-bats, but he's 3 for 6 with the homer. So I would go with Vientos and the power that he provides over Starling Marte at the DH spot. But I would not start Vientos at third base. There's a chance the Mets do it. I could see it happening, where they just decide to go down with their guys and the best 9 bats they can collect, which would be putting Vientos at third and having Starling Marte at DH. But for me, I would not start Marte. I'd keep him on the bench for a big at-bat late if that comes up. But I would go with Ronnie Mauricio at third base, Vientos at DH. We'll see what happens, though. It's going to be a thrilling game one way or the other. We're going to see the Mets either pull off a big win and hopefully the Reds can lose and the Mets can make the playoffs and we're all happy going into the week, or the season's going to be over. And it could be over in catastrophic fashion if the Brewers win and the Mets lose. I mean, that would just be the worst possible outcome. But very, very possible that we see that unfold. There's just no way of knowing. So all we can do is sit back, relax, sit back, or maybe sit forward on edge, watch the final game of the season. I really do appreciate all of you who have tuned in throughout the journey. I will go live regardless of the result. I'm not going to be in the ballpark, just braving that traffic for a third day in a row. Not something I'm looking forward to doing. I also want to be able to go live with whatever happens. I want to be there right after the season ends for you, giving you a show with my gut, raw reaction to the Mets either making the playoffs or coming up just a little bit short and putting a bow on this season, if that ends up being where we are at tomorrow or today, as you guys are all listening to this. Appreciate, again, those of you for tuning in. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. If you want to be part of our texting service, go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets or find the link in the episode description. Thank you for being Locked On Mets, your first listener, your first watch every day. Now for your second watch, check out Locked On MLB Game Night, the show that'll take you around all the action in Major League Baseball with insight from our local experts and league-wide experts that'll take you through the games. You find Locked On MLB Game Night on the Locked On MLB podcast feed, as well as the Locked On MLB YouTube channel.